Yo, what's up, Serper Squad? Tanner here, and I'm back with another Riparium build. I was looking through my materials for inspiration and found this glass container. After that, the gears started turning and I got the idea of what I wanted to make next. With the vision in mind, I proceeded to make a Foggy Riparium setup. As I said, this project will utilize this round container. It holds roughly a gallon of water. I also have an ultrasonic mist maker. This will allow me to create the foggy scene I've envisioned. The nice thing about this mist maker is that the cord has a built-in gasket. That means we can run the cord through the container to make a cleaner design. To get the job done, I equipped my drill with a diamond tip tool saw. I also got a ball of gray buff clay. What I did was mark a spot on the container where I wanted to drill the hole. A wall of clay was built up around the marking. Then I secured a piece of masking tape on the inside of the glass. This will stop the cut glass from falling into the container when the hole is drilled through. From there I filled the clay reservoir with water. The water acts as a heat sink that will prevent the drill bit from overheating and potentially cracking the glass. Without applying pressure, I started by drilling at an angle to create a notch for stability. Then the drill was gradually tilted to an upright position. Since the glass is thin, the hole saw cut through in no time. Before proceeding any further, I thoroughly cleaned the container. Here's a better look at the hole. Again, this will allow the mist maker to feed through the container instead of over it. Let's test it out. I don't know about you, but I think that looks really neat. From there I got a tube of GE Silicone 1 100% silicone. I discovered that the gasket didn't create a watertight seal, so I used this to seal it up and secure the mist maker to the bottom of the container. Everything was left to sit for 24 hours until the silicone cured. Now we can prep the container for the skate materials. To do the job I have two types of knitting mesh and zip ties. These will be combined to make a cage for the mist maker. The long piece was rolled into a cylindrical shape and zip tied together. This was used as a guide to determine how small I should cut the round piece of mesh. The cylinder was cut to a shorter height and the round piece was zip tied to the top. I also cut a notch in the side so that it would fit over top of the cord. To keep it in place while I add the other components, I applied hot glue. This is not a permanent solution, but it's good for items that need temporarily secured. Let's test it out again. It looks good, but the mesh was hindering the mist. I cut a hole just above the atomizer to deal with this. In fact, if anything covers the top of the atomizer, the unit won't produce any mist. That's one of the reasons I had to make the mesh cage. It will also allow me to stack stones on top to conceal everything and divert the water that sprays out. Now let's go over the materials I'll be using in this setup. For hardscape I'm using river stones, pea pebbles, and Malaysian driftwood. My substrate consists of fluval stratum, which is a planted tank substrate, fine gravel, and quartz sand. The plants I have are Equisetum scarpoides contorta, Cryptanthus acalis jade, Phytonia albovinus skeleton, Hemigryphus reponda, flame moss, and Bucephalangia wavy green. To start, I put down a layer of fluval stratum around the knitting mesh. I used a wide brush to make a smooth slope into the background. A few river stones were used to transition into the land, keep the substrate in place, and to hide the mesh. Next I put down a few dabs of super glue to secure a piece of driftwood. Per usual I'm using Gorilla Glue super glue gel. Once the wood was situated, I added the other large piece to the back of escape using the same techniques. From there I worked in more stratum to build up the land and to add more media for the plants. Once I had enough, I dug a hole for the equisetum and planted it accordingly. After that I added some pea pebbles for detail. The mesh was also capped off with a large river stone. More stratum and stones were added to the left side of the setup. Things are really coming together, but I need to make sure that nothing is spilled into the mesh compartment. To block it off for the time being, it was covered with a ball of polyfill fluff. I proceeded to add even more stratum, which I evened out with my fan brush. After that I placed the last piece of driftwood in the background. Now I can add the remainder of the plants. First up is the cryptanthus. In time this will fill in a decent amount of space and arch into the front of escape. Next up was the Photonia. I propped it up on one of the branches to make it look right at home. The last background plant was the Hemigraphis. With those plants situated, I topped everything off with a thin layer of pea pebbles. This made things much more cohesive since the stratum doesn't match the rest of the elements. Now that looks much better. Let's add the remainder of the substrate. First I added a few spoonfuls of sand and evened it out with a brush. Then a few spoonfuls of fine gravel were introduced. These really helped tie everything together and made the transitions more seamless. After that I proceeded to add tufts of moss throughout. These help soften everything up and make the aesthetic less rocky. Lastly, I planted the boost in between the cracks and crevices. Everything is set up and ready to go, it just needs filled up with water. To keep it clean, I filled it up very slowly with my pressurized mister. Once full, the polyfill could be removed. I also decided that it needed some Ficus pumila quercifolia for additional texture. Various floating plants were included as well. There you have it, a mini Riparium in a round container with a cool foggy vibe. All in all, I think it turned out really well. It has a certain aesthetic to it that a lot of my other builds just don't have. I'm glad because that's exactly what I was trying to achieve with this one, and every project really. I don't care if they're similar, but each should stand out from the rest. In some ways I tried to keep it simple because a lot of the detail is lost in the mist. That said, I do think the prominent elements are showcased well by it. The mist isn't something I run very often since it's primarily for show. I'll turn it on when I have people over and if I ever want to see it fogged up. Otherwise it's pointless besides raising the humidity for the plants. Other than the mist maker, I exclusively used items I already had laying around the house. I always try to work with what I have first because I think it helps foster my creativity. After all, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. As always, I'm curious what you think of the final product. Let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next one, Serper Squad. Take care.